Now for the news in detail. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been moved to intensive care in a hospital after his coronavirus symptoms worsened. In the US, meanwhile, the number of deaths has surged by 1,150 to nearly 11,000. Globally, the death toll has reached nearly 75,000 with over 1.3 million infected cases. More on that now in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic has continued to claim more lives for another day around the globe. Although in Spain and Italy, the daily death toll has been decreasing, France is recording the highest number of fatalities in the past 24 hours. For the British Prime Minister, world leaders have sent their best wishes for a speedy recovery. Downing Street's spokesman said Johnson has asked Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab to deputise where necessary.
The Prime Minister asked me as First Secretary to deputise for him where necessary in driving forward the government's plans to defeat coronavirus. And as you'll know, he's been receiving excellent care at St Thomas's Hospital.
The World Health Organization says more than 70 countries have joined the UN agency's trial to accelerate the search for an effective treatment. The Director General says about 20 institutions and companies are racing to develop a vaccine for COVID-19. In the US, President Donald Trump praised therapeutics for their work to find vaccines for the coronavirus.
At the end of the tunnel, there's so many things happening with therapeutics, with vaccines, with things that we really want. Deborah, Tony, they're all working so hard on this, but those therapeutics, I mean, look, the vaccines are going to be always a little bit later because of that testing period, but the therapeutics, getting the kind of things that I heard about today, talking to these brilliant companies and brilliant people on the phone was fantastic.
New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has demoted the country's health minister for breaching nationwide lockdown rules. Meanwhile, China's National Health Commission says no one has died in the past 24 hours from the pandemic in the country.
Well, along with a drop in the daily death toll, the number of recoveries has also increased in many countries. Data from the Johns Hopkins University shows in Germany, 7,381 people have recovered from the illness in the last 24 hours, compared to 3,252 new cases. The German Defense Ministry said the data shows the measures are beginning to have an effect. Globally, over 285,000 people have recovered from the coronavirus disease so far. Johns Hopkins University data shows China has the highest number of recoveries with 77,400. China's National Health Commission also said there were no deaths in the past 24 hours from COVID-19. Pakistan has recorded the highest jump in coronavirus infections in 24 hours, with 557 new cases. The health ministry said total infections have surged to over 3,800, while 28 patients are in critical condition. The ministry said with 4 deaths in 24 hours, the total has reached 54. The health ministry said nearly 430 patients of coronavirus have recovered across the country. It said over 1,900 infections have been recorded in Punjab, while Sindh province has just over 930 cases. There are 500 cases in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, 202 in Balochistan, and 83 in the capital city Islamabad. The ministry said 59% of transmissions are from other countries, while 41% of cases are domestic. The UN has asked India to closely monitor the plight of detainees in occupied Kashmir amid the COVID-19 spread. In a press brief, UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric said the High Commissioner for Human Rights has raised the issue of incarceration with the global community. Dujarric said the UN Secretary General believes that any political solution must take into consideration the issue of human rights in the valley. A fact-finding mission of India revealed New Delhi has arrested 13,000 Kashmiris, including minors, since August 5th. The report said the arrested have been shifted to jails across India, making it hard for families to travel to meet them. Pakistan has welcomed the statement, calling on India to immediately release all arbitrarily detained prisoners. In a tweet, Foreign Office spokesperson Aisha Faruqi said measures to combat COVID-19 must respect human rights of every individual. The plight of migrant workers in India has worsened under the nationwide lockdown as they face hunger and isolation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced a sudden 21-day-long curfew last month to counter the coronavirus spread. Hundreds of workers are in the lurch as they have nowhere to go and no means to earn. The workers said they have not received promised ration and money by the government. Meanwhile, a doctors' association has written to Modi over the targeting of health workers for raising the issue of lack of equipment. In a letter, the medics said instead of appreciation for their services, they have faced a harsh backlash from officials. The Taliban have called off the prisoner release talks, accusing the Kabul administration of delaying the procedure under one pretext or another. In a statement, spokesman Sohail Shaheen said the Taliban team will not participate in futile meetings with relevant sides. Shaheen said Taliban's technical team was in Kabul to hold talks for the prisoner's release under the Doha Agreement. He said the team was sent to identify and verify prisoners to start the release process. Meanwhile, a member of Kabul's negotiation team has said the delay is due to the Taliban's demand for the release of 15 senior commanders involved in big attacks. Mateen Bek said the Taliban's demands show their stubbornness and are not acceptable as they will lead to an increase in violence in the country. The release of 5,000 Taliban prisoners is part of the deal signed between the US and the Taliban in Doha on February 29th. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has called on friendly countries to pressurize the U.S. to lift sanctions amid the COVID-19 pandemic. In a phone call with the French President Emmanuel Macron, Rouhani termed curbs as cruel and one-sided. Rouhani said Iran is facing more difficulty as compared to the world due to Washington's sanctions. He said the U.S. has not only violated international laws by imposing illegal sanctions on Iran, but has also breached WHO regulations amid a pandemic. Meanwhile, the French president called on Iran to respect the nuclear deal, saying it will help ease regional tensions. Macron hoped Iran would refrain from taking new measures contrary to the 2015 nuclear deal. Turkey says it has killed 9 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in northern Syria. The Defense Ministry says the fighters were killed during Operation Peace Spring and Euphrates Shield in the region. The ministry said 8 militants were killed during Operation Peace Spring, while the other ones in Euphrates Shield. It said Ankara will not stop the operations against militants in the region. Since 2016, Turkey has launched a trio of operations across its border into northern Syria. Ankara holds the fighter group responsible for the deaths of some 40,000 people in a 30-year conflict. The UN has accused the Syrian government and its allies of targeting civilian facilities in the northwestern region. Secretary General Antonio Guterres said an internal UN inquiry revealed the Syrian government attacked schools and health facilities. The report said all 5 attacks were carried out by aircraft using either guided munitions or barrel bombs dropped from rotary wing aircraft. The inquiry also said it was probable that a May 2019 attack on a Palestinian refugee camp in Aleppo province was carried out by the armed Syrian opposition. The Board of Inquiry was tasked with examining 6 incidents in the Idlib de-escalation zone. Russia is a main powerful ally of the Syrian regime and provides it with extensive air power, including manned and unmanned aerial missions. The United States has designated a Russian white supremacist group as a terrorist organization. The Russian imperial movement is accused of training neo-Nazi militants in Western Europe to carry out bomb attacks. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and his counterterrorism coordinator Nathan Sales announced the step, saying it illustrates how serious this administration takes the threat. This is the first time Washington has ever used the terrorist label against a white supremacist group. This allows authorities to seize the organization's assets in the U.S. and prohibits Americans from financial dealings with the group. The group's members cast themselves as Russian Orthodox nationalists who favor restoring the monarchy. They've also called for safeguarding the interests of ethnic Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians. Last November, the State Department in its report said ethnically driven terrorism had risen alarmingly in 2018, both worldwide and in the US. Somali and US security forces have killed 8 alshabaab militants in the latest onslaught on the group in the southern region. The Somali Ministry of Information said no civilians were killed or wounded in the attack conducted by the National Army and US Africa Command. The ministry said both forces are committed to fighting al-Shabaab terrorists in order to prevent the loss of innocent lives. The US Africa Command largely targeted al-Shabaab figureheads based in southern and central Somalia, where the group still maintains a strong grip. Extremists have recently stepped up their attacks against African Union and Somali forces, especially in the capital, Mogadishu. I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The UN Security Council will hold its first meeting on the new coronavirus pandemic on Thursday. Diplomats said the meeting will be held behind closed doors. They said the meeting was delayed over divisions among the Council's 5 permanent members. 9 non-permanent members of the Security Council requested the meeting. South Africa did not support the move, saying the Council's job was peace and security, not health and economic issues. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he would deliver a report to the Council. The World Health Organization has criticized 2 French scientists who suggested Africa be used as a testing ground for a vaccine against coronavirus. The organization's Director General, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, said the WHO will not allow to make Africa a test ground for any vaccine. He said hangover from a colonial mentality has to stop. He said the same protocol will be followed everywhere, whether it is Europe or other parts of the world.
The hangover from a colonial mentality has to stop. And WHO will not allow this to happen. And it was a disgrace, actually, and appalling to hear during the 21st century from scientists that kind of remark. And we condemn this with the strongest terms possible. But we assure you that this will not happen in Africa and will not happen elsewhere in any country.
The U.S. government has allowed the manufacturing giant 3M to export N95 masks to Canada. The decision breaks a deadlock as Washington stopped the export of nearly 3 million specialized masks to Canada and Latin America. Under the new plan, 3M will import over 166 million masks from its factories in China over the coming 3 months to meet demand in the U.S. The dispute began on Thursday when President Trump invoked the 1950 Defense Production Act and halted Respirator's export to Ontario province. The decision has sparked fears that Ontario might run out of supplies for its medical staff battling the novel coronavirus pandemic by the end of the week. German Chancellor Angela Merkel says the European Union is facing the biggest test since its foundation due to the coronavirus pandemic. At a press briefing, Merkel said the pandemic has produced symmetrical shock and all countries are equally affected. The German Chancellor said there is a common interest in making certain that Europe emerges strong from this test. Merkel said Germany and Europe have to produce their own protective equipment. She said it was too early to talk about relaxing the lockdown, as last week the German government extended the restrictions until at least April 19th.
I would be a bad chancellor, and it would be a bad federal government if we were to name a date now. We can't. We have given the first indications as things have developed. Austria was a step ahead, but we have to use our own number of cases. It's not advised to talk about a date for Germany.
Well, the World Health Day is being celebrated today with a specific theme to support nurses and midwives amid the global coronavirus pandemic. In a message, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said World Health Day this year has come at a very difficult time for everyone. He said the UN is more grateful than ever, I should say, to all of those who work around the clock at risk of contracting the coronavirus pandemic. In a statement, the World Health Organization reminded world leaders of the critical role nurses and midwives play in keeping the world healthy. Nurses and other health workers are at the forefront of the COVID-19 response, providing high-quality, respectful treatment and care. The WHO said along with partners, it will make a series of recommendations to strengthen the nursing and midwifery workforce. It also called for support to ensure that health workers are strong enough to provide everyone with the health care they need. Honor Blackman, one of the most memorable co-stars of the early James Bond films, has died at the age of 94. The actress shot to fame in her late 30s, I should say, after playing the legendary Bond girl in the 1964 movie Goldfinger, starring alongside Sean Connery. In a statement, Blackman's family announced her death, saying she died of natural causes at her home in Sussex. It said she possessed an extraordinary combination of beauty, brains, and physical prowess, along with her unique voice and a dedicated work ethic. Blackman also became well known in Britain for playing the character Cathy Gale in the popular 1960s TV spy series The Avengers. Film directors and actors around the world are paying tribute to the actress. I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned. Over 100 global organizations have called on lenders to drop debt payments of developing countries this year. Major charities, including Oxfam and Action Aid International, are asking for the debt relief, which would free up $25 billion. The UK-based charity Jubilee Debt Campaign is spearheading the call. It said developing countries are being hit by an unprecedented economic shock and face an urgent health emergency. The campaign director said it is the fastest way to ensure availability of liquidity for countries to fight COVID-19. 69 of the world's poorest nations are due to pay $25.5 billion to other governments, multilateral institutions, and external private lenders this year. The French finance minister Le Maire has warned his country will likely see its worst post-war economic downturn this year. Le Maire told the Senate the economy is forecast to contract far below the negative 2.2%, a fall seen in 2009 after the global financial crisis. Le Maire said the slump is an indication of the amplitude of the economic shock the country is facing. Last month, the government estimated the economy will contract 1% this year. The French Statistics Office, INSEE, says the lockdown has slashed overall economic activity by 35%. It estimates every month of the shutdown will cut annual GDP by 3 percentage points. European stock markets are trading higher over investors' hopes of a plateau in the coronavirus pandemic in the region.
Frankfurt's DAX has gained over 3.5%. CAC 40 in Paris is trading over 3% higher. London's FTSE 100 is trading over 2% higher. Tour operator Carnival stocks jump over 26%, while cinema chain Cineworld stocks jumped over 21%. In Asia, Hong Kong's Hang Seng led the gains, closing over 2% higher. Nikkei 225 and Shanghai Composite is trading over 2% each. Seoul's Kospi closed over 1.5% higher as Samsung Electronics shares jumped over 1% after it announced its first quarter profit. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price is trading over 1% higher.
Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. Well, for the latest on these and other stories, you can always follow us on our social media at Indus.news. Thanks for watching this bulletin.